Well, welcome to this leadership session. And the topic today is about mentoring. Mentoring has become a real buzzword in the business community, finding someone who can help me get better business success, that sort of thing. But it's actually a very biblical concept. If we think of Elisha, if we think of Paul and Timothy, a younger believer putting their trust in someone older to help direct them to wrestle through life with, I think is a really, really helpful way. And of course, Jesus was a discipler of his 12. So mentoring is one of the parts of discipling. Here's a question. If you just had 3 types of people who could input into your life, how would you choose them?
I think you think of it in terms of one person who's ahead of you. So they might be 5, 10, 15 years older. They've been through the life season before you.
Right.
Somebody beside you. So a peer mentor, somebody who can experience life together, who's just become a father like you have, or become a leader, like a pastor like you have. And then somebody behind who's 5, 10, 15 years younger. So someone ahead, someone beside, and someone behind.
Someone you can input into with your life experience.
Yeah.
And so that sort of builds this unbreakable chain of men helping other men grow, of women helping other women grow in their faith and in their skills. So mentoring is a really key part of leadership, isn't it?
Now, Roy, with this, what would you say is involved in mentoring? Can you give us some ideas of what needs to be there?
Yeah. So what are the elements that make mentoring work? And I think there's 5 things that I'm going to say today. One is that if it's intentional, then it works. So someone being intentional, say, will you mentor me? Will you disciple me? Be intentional about the time and the preparation and the prayer. So it's an intentional thing. It's not something that just accidentally happens every now and again. The second thing is that it should be goal orientated. And the goal is for the mentee, so the mentor is the discipler and the mentee is the person being discipled. The mentee, it's their goals that you're fulfilling. The mentor isn't just teaching them some course. It comes out of the need of the mentee. The third element, which might be important, is that it might just be for a season. When you agree to mentor someone, it doesn't have to be forever. It might just say, well, let's walk together for a year, or while you're a young father, or while you're stepping into this leadership role. So it's seasonal. So intentional, goal-orientated, seasonal. Also, this important 4th point is that you're inviting someone to speak into your life. You're saying, will you pray for me? Will you speak to me honestly? Things that I can't see. So it's a very, very special relationship in that way. And the last thing, probably the simplest way, is you're saying, you could show me about godliness. So would you help me be more godly? Like Timothy said to Paul, show me how to walk with the Father. So mentoring can have many different shapes and forms. So when you imagine it, give me a couple of scenarios. What could it look like?
Yeah, I mean, people I've mentored, done it in many ways and been mentored in different ways. Probably, one might be once a month for 12 months, even over a Zoom call or a phone call if you don't live close. So that's one option. Another one might be you might have an event coming up, like a big conference or a change of job or something like that. So you might say, let's meet for coffee for 90 minutes every 2 weeks for 4 months.
Yeah, so it's just a season.
Short period of time, but quite intense.
Yeah.
Or if it's difficult to get together even every month, it may be 3 or 4 times a year where you spend half a day together and go deeper that way. So, and there's many other ways you can do it. Be creative.
Yeah. So here I am. I'm someone who wants to grow in godliness, and I want to choose a mentor who might be able to help me with my godliness and my focus of life, my skill set. So how would I choose someone? What characteristics am I looking for, Si?
I think some of the mentors that I've had, it's been about somebody who helps me to be more courageous or to keep persevering or to step out, particularly in areas where I struggle. I want somebody that's going to give me courage to keep going. So ask questions about it, prepare for it, set some goals.
Yeah.
What about you, Roy?
Well, I think for me, someone who's able to listen well and ask good questions, I think is really, really important. I think also this idea of someone who can create a space that's safe, that I trust. So they're not going to go and tell everyone about our discussion. It's private. I think that's
very important.
That's very important.
Yeah.
Now, a mentor, how would they choose a mentee? Because it's a relationship. So what sort of qualities might you be looking for in a believer that you want to mentor?
Well, I think somebody who's willing to learn. But I know in my experience, it's always been somebody who's asked me. So they've wanted help. So I've been invited into their life in a sense. I think that's been an important aspect.
Yeah. For me, it's someone who I could add value to. So I see potential. Maybe they are doing a similar focus of ministry with me, and I know that my experience could help them to grow in godliness in that area. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Now, there's lots of misconceptions about mentoring, because it's such a buzzword. So does a mentor have to be this old person that's had all the life experience and knows everything?
No. A mentor needs to be mature and trustworthy, but they might only be 5 or 10 years older than you. So in some ways, having somebody who's a lot older can be even harder, I think. So somebody who's really just a stage ahead of you, if you like.
Yeah, I often find 15 years, which is half a generation, is a really good age difference because they remember enough about your season of life to help you. But we said remember someone in front, someone beside, someone behind you. Does a mentor need to be perfect? Have it all together?
I hope not.
Those poor people you were
No,
mentoring.
of course not. A mentor needs to be authentic and real, which means that they're not going to be perfect because nobody is. So,
So they don't need all the answers then?
No, they have to ask good questions. They don't have to have the answers. They need to help you wrestle through it.
Yeah, and for you to find the answers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. What about curriculum? Like, is it helpful to have a book, or do you have to have a book or something to work through? Or
no. And again, I've experienced many things. I have sometimes done it where we've worked through a book, but sometimes you work through a passage or a book of the Bible. But it's often about thinking through what's going to be the best process for you at that time. So, you don't need a curriculum. Certainly you want to do it around the Bible. You want to have the Bible very close. But in terms of a curriculum, not necessarily.
And the last misconception, is it just about accountability?
No, it's accountability is one aspect. It's about asking good questions. It's about listening. It's about challenging. And then, as you've mentioned many times, it's about helping to grow in godliness.
Yeah. So when I think of what to base a mentoring session on, maybe if you have 60 minutes, what sorts of areas of life would you cover? And I think there's 5 that are really helpful to think about. One is their spiritual life. One is their emotional life. One is their life with others, their relationships. Another is the rhythms of their life, their routines, their hopes for doing things, putting things in place in their life. And the last one would be their vulnerabilities, their brokenness. Where are they struggling with life? So you can ask questions about those areas, whatever the mentee wants you to focus on. So a mentee might say, I would really like you to help me wrestle with my vulnerabilities or with my broken relationships. And that's the focus of it. So as a mentor, you would respect that and ask them questions along those lines. Yeah.
That's really helpful, Roy. these are very positive things, but there are some problems that can arise. So to help us overcome some of those, what things do we need to be cautious about?
Yeah. I think there's two things to be cautious about in terms of mentoring, and that is mentoring or being mentored by someone of the opposite sex. I don't think it's helpful because mentoring, it's practical and very personal, so it becomes very intimate. You will know things, and I think that men should mentor men and women. I think that's a helpful thing. The other thing that I would say is that if you want to grow in godliness, then finding a mentor who's a non-believer is not helpful. So you want someone who is praying for you, encouraging you, spurring your faith on. I think only a believer can do that. So I think they're two things to be.
And be confidential. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
So any mentoring relationship is a very confidential one.
Yeah. So your job as a mentor is to create a safe place, a safe place for this younger believer to wrestle with God and their life together. It's a safe place. So if you're thinking about a couple of aspects of what needs to be in a mentoring session, tell us about that side.
We've touched on many, but I think accountability is one, so that find out how things went in between meetings. So we talked about this last time. Did you do it? And accountability. Follow-up is important. You might challenge the mentee with some reading that they should do, or read this passage, or listen to this podcast. So follow-up is quite helpful. And then set the next meeting time. So be clear in terms of, okay, we're going to meet again in a month. So they're just three.
Yeah, they're really practical things. So mentoring is really a skill of listening and inputting into someone's life by asking powerful questions, so that they can grow. It's a chain of relationships right across the body of Christ. And so I encourage you to disciple in this very personal and practical way, because it has powerful implications for people's lives.